Last night when I was getting ready for this morning, I was thinking back on my life experiences and what kind of message that I would want to convey to the commissioners. And as I was looking back on that, I was thinking about my childhood growing up on a farm and how Saturday night was always family night, so we'd always gather around the television and watch Iowa Public Television. Most of those, if you're aware of that, are British sitcoms. But at the end of the night was the Red Green Show. I don't know if you're familiar with that show or not, and I don't know if I learned a lot from that, but I did learn that there are a whole bunch of things that you can do with duct tape. Some of which I put in place while growing up on the farm. Growing up on the farm instilled in me the building blocks to my success: work ethic, time management, discipline, and grit. From a very young age, these have served me throughout my life. I was the first one in my family to attend college, and for me, attending college was not a given. While taking my finance major, I was required to take some law electives, and it was at that time that I first became interested in the law. I also then had the opportunity to do an internship at the Attorney General's office. I worked partly in the Sexually Violent Predator Division, and as you can imagine, many of the cases that I was reviewing or looking at and compiling reports on were very gruesome and ugly, quite frankly. And I think many people would have shied away from that. But to me, it instilled a belief in the legal process and what people can accomplish with the law. I attended law school at Drake University. And during my time at Drake, I had the opportunity to experience the Des Moines law firm, work experience. And it was at that time I thought that maybe I would return home and join a small practice. Now, I'll probably tell you, and some of you know, that since there's a shortage of lawyers in rural Iowa, that returning home and working in a small community probably isn't anyone's dream. But for me, it provided immense opportunity and experience. I filed my first appellate brief the day I was admitted to the bar, and on day one, I started doing things that most lawyers took 20 or 30 years to do. My practice is a general practice. I take whatever walks in the door. And many of these matters are not just simple matters. Many of these are complex matters in litigation that take years and hundreds of hours. My practice might span from real estate, any county attorney work that I'm called to do, family law, tax questions, personal injury. My practice runs the gamut. I understand that writing on a deadline and time management are very important. I've also had the opportunity in my practice to represent real clients, individuals that are truly affected by the outcomes that they have in the cases that they're dealing with. I've handled cases in several of Iowa's district courts, both urban and rural, so I understand that there's a difference in the process used in each of those areas. In addition to a rural practice, I think the thing that maybe most people don't think about is the business management side. Not only am I a lawyer, but I'm also having to manage my practice from budgets, employee benefits, hiring, firing. Luckily, I haven't had to fire anyone yet. Payroll, technology, the list is really never ending. And I don't have the luxury of saying that it's not my problem. Every problem is my problem. And in handling these problems, I think collegiality is key. Things can get tense at times, but being able to handle problems while being collegial is really the way to handle those. I see my assistants as essential to everything that I do, and I'd be the first to admit to you that I don't consider myself to be the most important person on the team. A bad work environment just gets in the way of getting the mission done. These experiences have given me the confidence that my skill set and ability will allow me to do this job. Many times when I reflect back on the things that I'm doing when I face challenges, I often revisit an answer to a question that Steve Jobs gave. And I don't know what the question was, but I assume it was something posed to him about success. And paraphrased, what he said was, is people say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. The reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. So if you don't love it and you're not having fun doing it, you're going to give up. That's what happens to most people, actually. If you really look at the people that ended up being successful and the ones that did not, oftentimes the one that ones that became successful loved what they did so they could persevere when it got really tough. The ones that didn't love it quit because they're sane. So you have to love it and you have to have passion. I have a really profound respect for the judicial branch. And some may even say a passion and a love for the work that judges do and what the judicial branch represents. Many times in watching the Red Green Show, at the end of a segment, he would always say, "Remember, I'm pulling for you. We're all in this together." And to close, I say to you, as you guys sit here today in pursuit to fulfill this important role, I say to each commissioner, remember, I'm pulling for you. We're all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll open it up for questions. Commissioner Picklap?
Thank you. Nice job, Aaron. I have no further questions.
Commissioner Stang?
Good morning. Thank
Hello.
you for your application, for being here. Good to see you again. One of the traits or characteristics we've heard of, or that we've heard is important this round, is the ability to just hit the ground running. Could you share with the commission why or how it is that you think that you're ready to hit the ground running at the Court of Appeals level? In particular, I'd like you to comment about the fact that you're a private practitioner as opposed to a judicial officer at this time.
Well, I think as a private practitioner, there's a lot of other things going on in a practice just beyond, the cases that you're dealing with that all are kind of, I guess, time drained. So you have to be very effective in managing your time. With my practice being so broad, I feel like I have a pretty good grip of all of the different areas of law that a Court of Appeals judge would be handling. So I don't think there's really going to be a whole lot of, I guess, getting up to speed as far as figuring that out. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a learning curve on, procedure and how, work gets assigned and things like that. But I really don't have any concerns in my ability to do the work and accomplish what needs to be done.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hoig?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner
Morning,
Spies?
Mr. Ahrendsen.
Morning.
One of the things you noted in your opening remarks was that you have flesh and blood clients. And why is a background in representing individuals, be they individual clients or owners of businesses or farmers, why is that important, and what attributes does that about your private practice bring to your role as a judge?
Well, I've had both, but I can tell you that, representing individuals can be very challenging at times, but it also can be very fulfilling. And it's primarily because it affects them, so deeply. If you're representing a corporation, if things go badly, there's no, I guess I call it a heartbeat. There's no heartbeat there. No one's going to get gored. There might be some trickle-down effects to management or things like that. But when you're representing individuals, in family law, in other cases like that, I think it's really important to keep in mind how deeply it really affects them, the decisions that are being made, and to be very cautious and considerate, of the things that they may be going through, which may have caused some of the problems that they're facing to begin with. So for me, being a judge, I think it's very important to kind of have that background and an understanding that not all, names that appear in a caption are equal.
Thanks.
Commissioner Hartkoff?
Thank you very much. Good to see you, Aaron. Are there any particular things that you've done between the last vacancy that you had applied for on the Court of Appeals and this one to enhance your application and strengthen your consideration for being a finalist?
Well, nothing particularly. I've just continued on with my practice, which has been very busy. I did update one of the cases that I was involved in, reference, because it finally got concluded after 4 or 5 years. That it's kind of a unique experience. I don't think many people have had a client, well, not a client, I guess have the opposing party during opening statements get hauled off by the EMTs. And actually, I have a watch that was used by one of the jury members to check the guy's pulse. So that's a special memory attached to that watch, I guess. But that would really be the only thing that, has changed in my practice. Where I'm at in my practice, not a whole lot's going to change. It's just kind of a continuing in and out of clients and matters.
Commissioner Summerall?
Iowa Court of Appeals judges produce 100 written decisions a year. What would your decisions look like, and is there somebody who's a role model for you in terms of the way they write their decisions?
I think growing up, and I know there would be a few commissioners that have practiced in my area. So, Judge McMenamy was the first judge that I, had a lot of cases in front of, and I was always amazed by his writing style. I would say he was fairly deliberate, in writing, and it kind of made you, think, well, I don't know, maybe what's going on here. But every time that he would, file a decision, it was very short and concise, well-researched, and to the point. There really weren't a lot of wasted words. And I think that really helps have clear writing. And it also helps if you have, a bunch of decisions that need to be issued. I mean, you have to be able to identify what the real issues are in the case, write, concisely on those issues, without, adding a bunch of extemporaneous things in there that maybe really don't matter to that case, so you can keep things moving.
Thank you.
Commissioner Henderson,
I have no questions, thank you.
Commissioner Roberts.
Aaron, you've talked about your private practice, and it's in general practice. You've also noted in your application that you've served as an assistant county attorney from January 2017 to present. Can you talk about what percentage of your practice that makes up, and maybe talk about how that experience might benefit you on the Court of Appeals?
As far as a percentage, it's hard to say because it varies just depending on, what cases we have in Carroll County. Right now we have a few serious ones. I mean, I'm happy to say that in Carroll we don't per se necessarily have a bunch of serious crime. But, we do have those cases, and when those pop up, I'm need to step in, and that obviously becomes more of a focus. But, I think I don't remember the percentage I put in my application, but I don't know, 15 or 20%, maybe 25% on average in a given year. And I think that background's really important to a Court of Appeals judge because, a vast majority of the cases that they're ruling in are criminal in nature, and having an understanding of, procedure in courtroom proceedings and criminal matters is, I think, very important.
Commissioner Hanson.
Good morning. How do you balance the need to process decisions quickly, as in on the Court of Appeals, but also be very thorough?
For me, I think, when I'm in my practice and looking at the cases I have, I think once you're doing it a little bit, you can look at a case and look at the issues, and you can tell and kind of prioritize the cases. Some cases involve relatively simple issues, and right up front that they're not going to require, a whole lot of legwork. And sometimes you see issues and that they're going to require a bunch of work. And so those are ones that you kind of maybe try to give yourself a little more lead time on. All of the cases are important, but I don't think necessarily every case needs the same amount of time. So I think as you're kind of, processing through cases, you need to identify the ones that maybe are going to require more time, and also be able to identify the ones that really aren't. And, those are the ones that you can, turn over quicker than the ones that you think maybe have some bigger issues going on.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Commissioner Schnurr.
Morning, Aaron.
Morning.
You talked a little bit about some of the difficult cases you've been involved in. I want you to talk about those cases from the perspective of a judge on the Court of Appeals and looking at a record in front of you. And how do you decide those difficult cases without allowing emotion to carry you away, and apply the law to come to a decision under the law?
For me, I guess being a judge in those cases, if the roles were reversed, I actually had a case last summer where we were having a lot of issues getting the case submitted, and this was going to be the third time that we were trying it. And I kind of sat there and I kept thinking, man, this case is going up on appeal. What's this going to look like? Because, we're kind of skipping some things and just trying to figure out a way to get this case done. And I think, in that case, there was kind of a give and take with the judge. And I think we were both in that case really thinking about, trying to preserve the record the best we could. I wanted to do that for my client, and I think the judge wanted to do that because he didn't want to have this case back again in a couple of years. So I think, when at least in that case and some of the other ones, I'm always kind of thinking, how's this going to look to somebody else reading this record? Is it going to make sense? Are all the things in there? And I certainly, that case gave me a lot of perspective, I think, in, maybe even identifying some issues that I think were going to come up and just deciding to forego them altogether because I didn't even want to make, a record that would raise those issues. So I think as a judge, trying to be very level-headed and just looking at what's there and kind of thinking through those issues, to me would be how I approach it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Graber.
Thank you for your application. Could you describe your judicial philosophy?
For me, my philosophy is that I think it should be steady. I could say many times that, as the laws evolve, things have changed. But a lot of times that change takes a long time, for it to happen. And really, I don't always think that, and many times it happens with the legislature, it's not really coming, from the bench. But, I consider my philosophy to be, very considerate and calculated, and really trying to understand, the history and the issues that are being presented to me.
Commissioner Parrish.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner DeFord.
Thank you for your application, Mr. Ahrendsen. You are a true general practitioner, balancing both a litigation and transactional practice, along with your assistant county attorney responsibilities. How do you believe that prepares you for the Court of Appeals?
Well, I think, given the caseload that a Court of Appeals judge will have, I certainly feel like with my practice that I, am being pulled in many, different directions all at the same time. I think there was a movie a year or two ago called Everything Everywhere All at Once or something like that, and sometimes I feel like that in my practice. And so you're just constantly going, so I think for me, transitioning, into this role, if I would be lucky enough to get it, would really just kind of be not that big of a deal to me. I really feel like the caseload I have and the time management that, I've been doing this quite some time at this point.
Thank you.
Commissioner Marquardt.
When we met, well, thank you for your application. When we met individually, I think we discussed how you've had to collaborate on some of your cases. How would that practice and collaboration translate over to a position on the Court of Appeals?
I really like collaborating. In my office, I'm fortunate enough to have 3 other attorneys who, I all consider to be, very intelligent. And sometimes we have different views, and I think that's really where you can work out good arguments and bad arguments is when you're kind of maybe debating a case or sitting around the conference table kind of working through a case and trying to understand the different issues. And many times, there's a different point of view or a different perspective that was pointed out to me that maybe wasn't going to be something that I was focused in on. So I think collaboration only strengthens, the quality of someone's work product. So I welcome collaboration at any point.
Commissioner Boyer.
Thanks for your application, Aaron. I have no further questions at this time.
Commissioner Chase.
You talked about collegiality being the key in your opening statement. Expand on what that means to you and how you would implement that if you're selected to serve on the Court of Appeals.
Collegiality to me means, being respectful of other people, their time, their, opinions. And I see it more as a team, format. We're all here trying to accomplish the same goal. So many times, with the people I'm working with, I want to make sure they have what they need to be able to do what I want them to do. And I think we work together, in that sense. And as far as, being a judge, I think, again, I kind of touched on it, but when you're really busy, anything that you have to stop and deal with, whether it be personnel issues, or the like, really just starts to sap energy and time away from, getting the other things done. And frankly, nobody wants to work in an environment where it's, hostile or unpleasant. I like to think that at least in my office, we have, fun or try to have fun when we're, doing our work. So, to me, it's really important that kind of carries over to the work judges do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our time is up. We appreciate your application, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.